What does it mean to begin? For a modern mind, a beginning is simply a point on a line. Two men, separated by a millennium and a half. Two different languages. Two entirely different empires of oppression, yet they both anchor their survival. The word the English translators render as beginning is the Greek ark. If you walked between the massive stone columns of the Greek academies in the centuries before Christ, you would hear philosophers arguing fiercely about this exact word. To a Greek mind, the arch was not simply the first tick of a temporal clock. It was the fundamental substance of reality. It was the active, ruling principle that gave shape and order to the physical universe. We still hear the echo of this weight in our own English language today. An architect is the master builder. An archangel is a ruling messenger. The arch is the source that holds the structure together. The Apostle Paul reaches for this exact same word when he writes to the church in Colossae. In Colossians 1:18, speaking of Jesus, he writes, "He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead. He is the ark." That Greek root changes everything about how you read John's opening line. When John says the Word was in the beginning, he is not merely giving you a timeline of when the Son of God existed. He is giving you a hierarchy of cosmic power on exactly the same three words. In the beginning, most people assume in the beginning is just a chronological marker. The beginning is not a date on a calendar. It is the ruling source of all existence. To say that Jesus is the arche is to say that whatever is happening in the Roman Empire, whatever political chaos is tearing through the cobblestone streets, the original blueprint of the universe is still firmly in control of the house. But John does not just use this word to open his story. Decades later, as a prisoner on Patmos, he hears it spoken directly to him from the end of the world. The seals are broken. The bowls are poured out. The trumpets sound. The empire of man collapses under its own weight. The sky rolls back like a scroll. The stars fall to the dirt. The islands flee. The mountains crumble into ash. A new city descends out of the atmosphere. The gates are carved from solid pearl. The foundations flash with jasper and sapphire. The streets reflect the sky like pure glass. But there is no sun. There is no moon. There is no night. The old man watches the vision unfold on the cold rock of Patmos. The dark, thrashing ocean of Genesis 1 is entirely gone. The text explicitly notes, "And there was no longer any sea." The chaos is permanently erased. The shadows are banished. A divine once upon a time. A simple way to open a very long, complicated book, and it does mark the start of the narrative. There is no temple structure to visit. The air itself glows with a heavy, uncreated light, and then a voice shatters the silence. It hits John's chest like the roar of rushing water. It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. The Greek word echoing out of the throne room is arche. The voice speaking from the center of the apocalyptic future is the exact same voice that hovered over the deep in the primordial past. The cycle completes itself. The end of the biblical story does not introduce a brand new, foreign reality. It fully manifests what was already contained in the seed. The Alpha is the Omega. The Bereshit is the climax. When the Creator claims to be the ark at the end of all things, he makes a devastating theological claim. The future is not a blank page waiting to be written. It is a return to the origin. This is not an escape from reality. It is the restoration of the blueprint. Every drop of darkness is squeezed out of the timeline. The cosmic water is subdued. The city needs no celestial bodies to warm it, because the original light, U2014, the light that tore through the void, before the sun was even hung in the Genesis sky, U2014 has finally taken up permanent residence among humanity. The exile is over. But if you look closer at the Hebrew ink of the Torah, at the Greek letters of John's Gospel, the head governs the body perfectly. But there is a reason this ancient vision feels so impossible to the modern mind. We are perpetually exhausted, burning ourselves out in a relentless pursuit of fresh starts and new chapters. Because we are operating on a fundamentally broken timeline. We are a species addicted to the illusion of the clean slate. When our lives begin to feel like a formless void, when the chaos rises up in our homes, our bodies, or our bank accounts, our default modern instinct is to manufacture a new beginning. We pack cardboard boxes and pull the heavy plastic tape tight, listening to the loud rip of the adhesive. We move to a new city where nobody knows our history. We breathe in the sharp smell of fresh paint in a new apartment. We download a new app on the 1st of January. We change our routines, assuming the momentum of a fresh start will somehow outrun the shadow. We believe that if we just draw a line in the sand and step over it, the darkness will stay on the other side. But a change of scenery is not a new beginning. It is just a new location for the exact same chaos. Because we have forgotten the ancient architecture of time, we treat a beginning as something we construct. At the final apocalyptic visions of Revelation, you start to see something the timeline reading completely misses. We think it is an action we take to escape our past. We live on a horizontal timeline, constantly trying to move forward, and when we fail, we try to draw a new starting line further down the path. But Moses and John are insisting on something infinitely more profound. They are arguing that you cannot manufacture a beginning because the true beginning is not a date on a calendar. It is a person. It is an arch. It is a supreme, ruling authority that already exists. Genesis and John do not operate on a horizontal timeline. They operate on a vertical hierarchy. The beginning is not behind you in the past. It is above you. It is the head, Rosh, the chief, Arche, the source from which every molecule of reality currently flows. If your life is untethered from that source, you will spend your entire existence endlessly hitting the reset button. You will be perpetually exhausted, packing the same boxes, wondering why the dark water keeps rising in every new room you walk into. But the biblical text offers a completely different way to face the rising water, and it requires you to stop running. The Spirit hovered over the dark water, and the uncreated light broke through. A prophet wrote a single word in a desert. The beginning is not a moment that was left behind. It is an architecture that holds up the present, and anchored a nation of slaves to a foundation. An old man picked up a reed pen in a damp cave and declared war on a Roman emperor. The philosophers argued over the source of the universe, and a fisherman gave it a human name. A prisoner wrote a letter to Colossae and reminded them who was holding the structure together. The sea of chaos was permanently erased, and a new city descended without a sun. The voice thundered from the end of all things, and revealed it was the exact same voice from the start. One blueprint, one source. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the re-shit. The first bundle of wheat pulled from the ancient soil. It is not a point on a timeline. It is not a ticking clock you move away from. It is a physical guarantee held in a farmer's dirt-stained hands, carrying the smell of the earth, proving that the rest of the harvest is already on its way. If you are in a season where your life feels like tohu vabohu, waste and void, and you are exhausting yourself trying to manufacture a fresh start, stop packing boxes. You do not need a new beginning. You need the original one. The beginning is not a date in the past that you missed. In the biblical imagination, the beginning is not a starting block you sprint away from. It is the foundation. It is the architecture you are standing inside right now. It is the ark, the head that still governs the body. The word that was in the beginning does not need your permission to step into your present. You only have to stop running, stand in the dark, and wait for the voice. And may the God who has never once been intimidated by the chaos speak light into your absolute dark and hold your structure together when the ground begins to shake. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to start over. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts of the house you are currently standing in. If you misunderstand the foundation, every room you build on top of it will be crooked. Every concept of justice, every framework for suffering, every definition of love will eventually warp and collapse. The writers of Scripture knew this. That is why they do not just mention the beginning once and move on. They weaponize it. It is a date on a calendar that you move away from. The further you walk, the further the beginning recedes into the distance, whenever the world is about to shatter, whenever the darkness seems absolute. The text forces the reader to look backward. They return to the origin point not for nostalgia, but for ammunition. To feel the weight of this pattern, you have to let go of the modern clock. You have to step into a culture where time is not a line, but a cycle. And you have to start with the very first word ever recorded on the Hebrew scroll, a word so dense, it contains the entire blueprint of the universe inside its own spelling. We are conditioned to measure our lives by the sweeping second hand of a mechanical watch. You look at the glass face and see time being sliced into tiny, irretrievable pieces, falling away behind you. The Western mind imagines history as an arrow shot from a bow, traveling in a straight line, flying further and further from the archer, until it eventually runs out of momentum and hits the dirt. In that framework, the beginning is the least relevant part of the flight. But ancient Hebrew thinkers did not wear watches, and they did not view history through the metaphor of an arrow. They experienced time through, until it is nothing more than a memory. But the ancient mind did not think of time like a string pulled tight, the calluses on their hands and the soil under their feet. They felt the rhythm of the early rains turning the cracked desert crust into heavy mud. They watched the moon swell into a glowing disk and shrink back into a sliver of darkness. Cycle after cycle, generation after generation, time was not an arrow. Time was a seed. A seed does not simply exist at the start of a tree's life and then disappear into the past. Everything the oak will ever be, every branch it will push out, every leaf it will drop, the exact density of its wood is already encoded inside the acorn before it is ever buried in the ground. The origin contains the destiny. The linguistic worldview of the Old Testament reflects this completely. In biblical Hebrew, one of the primary words used for the past is kedem. But kedem does not just mean what happened yesterday. It is also the word for east, the direction of the rising sun, the geographical location of Eden. To the ancient Israelite mind, to look to the past was to face the sunrise. You walk into the future by keeping your eyes locked on the beginning. This changes how you are supposed to read the text. The creation account is not a historical prologue attached to the front of a theology book. It is the genetic code of reality. A man sits in the shadow of a mountain that is still smoking, holding a bone stylus over stretched animal skin. If you want to know what God will do when your life collapses into absolute ruin, you do not have to guess. You do not have to search for a new, unprecedented revelation. You only have to look at what he did the very first time. He confronted a formless void. To see the pattern, you have to rewind the tape all the way back to the primordial dark. The earth is a graveyard of water. There is no shape. There is no shore. There is no light. Total. Crushing blackness pressed against a raging tide. The Hebrew calls it tohu vabohu, waste and void. A violent ocean thrashing in the absolute dark. This is the baseline of reality. And then, a breath. The Spirit of God hovers over the surface of the deep. A wind vibrates against the black water. A voice shatters the silence. Let there be light. The light tears through the dark. The water separates. The dry land breaks the surface. The rhythm of the universe begins, but notice the sequence. God does not eliminate the chaos before he begins to work. He speaks directly into the middle of it. The dark is not a barrier. It is a canvas. The light does not ask the darkness for permission to exist. It simply arrives. And the very first word the author uses to frame this arrival holds a secret that English translations completely obscure. He breathes in the smell of campfire smoke and desert dust. The people behind him are a fractured mob of ex-slaves. Look at the first page of a printed Bible. Your eyes hit the crisp black ink of Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and you see 4 English words. In the beginning, God. The English translation requires a phrase to express what the original ancient text accomplishes with a single breath. The very first word of the entire scriptural library, sitting at the top of the Hebrew scroll, is the word Bereshit. When an English reader hears beginning, they imagine a stopwatch clicking down from zero. They think of a timeline stretching forward into empty space. But Bereshit does not actually come from a root word associated with time. It is built entirely on the Hebrew root Rosh. Rosh means head. It means the chief, the summit, the supreme authority. When you expand the root into Reshit, it carries the imagery of the first fruits of a harvest. When an ancient Israelite farmer gathered the very first stalks of golden wheat from the soil, smelling the earth on the roots, he called that bundle the Reshit. It was the promise piece. It was the physical guarantee that the rest of the crop was already on its way. This root changes everything about how you read the opening of the universe. When the author writes Bereshit, they are not telling you what time it was, hungry and complaining, staring at an empty wilderness. He is writing the birth of the world to people who feel like their world is ending. They are establishing a hierarchy. Bereshit is not a point on a historical clock. It is the head of a living body. If something about seeing the ancient architecture beneath the English text is stirring a desire to read the Bible differently, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a comment and hit subscribe. Because every week, we go into the original languages to find what got lost in translation. So, the head governs the body. Whatever happens to the head will inevitably dictate what happens to the limbs. The chaos of the dark water in Genesis was subjected to the speaking voice of the Creator. And because that authority was established at the Rosh, at the head, it meant that every time chaos rose up again in human history, the speaking voice would still have jurisdiction over it. The beginning was the blueprint for every future rescue. The Hebrew mind rested in this reality for over a millennium. But then, the empire shifted. The Romans paved their roads in stone, crucified their dissidents on rough timber, and forced the known world to speak Greek. The Hebrew language was pushed to the margins, and a tiny community of Jewish fishermen and tax collectors suddenly had to explain an empty tomb. Centuries later, an old man sits in a damp cave on a Roman prison island. The air is heavy with sea salt, to a Greco-Roman world that did not care about a Jewish harvest. To make them understand, one of those fishermen had to borrow a Greek word that was just as dangerous as the Hebrew one. The island of Patmos is a jagged rock jutting out of the Aegean Sea. The wind bites against the stone. The salt spray hangs thick in the air, leaving a bitter, metallic taste on the lips. In a damp cave, lit by a single flickering oil lamp, an old man leans over a rough sheet of papyrus. The stylus scratches against the grain of the plant fibers. You can hear it in the quiet of the cave. Scratch. Pause. Scratch. His hands are weathered. His bones ache from the damp cold of the stone floor. Every other voice he loved has been violently silenced by the empire. Peter is buried under the dirt in Rome. Paul is a memory of an executioner's blade. James was struck down by a sword before the movement even fully began. John is the last one left. He is trapped on a prison colony under the absolute, crushing authority of the Emperor Domitian. A man, he listens to the Aegean waves crash against jagged rock. His friends have been executed. His movement is being hunted, who demands to be worshipped as Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. The world is violently dark. To a first-century believer, the Roman Empire feels exactly like the primordial ocean. It is the new tohu vabohu. It is the thrashing. Chaotic water trying to swallow the light. And John picks up his pen to write the biography of a rabbi who was crucified by that same empire. He has a choice to make. How do you introduce a man who died as a state criminal to a world that only respects raw military might? Matthew started his scroll with a legal genealogy and tied Jesus to a throne. Mark started his scroll with a wild prophet and tied Jesus to the wilderness. Luke started his scroll with a burning altar and tied Jesus to the priesthood. But John bypasses the priesthood. He bypasses the wilderness. He bypasses the kings, the patriarchs, and the flood. He pushes his pen past the boundaries of human history, rewinding the tape all the way back to the total blackness before the very first sunrise. He writes, "In the beginning was the Word." He is not telling a gentle story about a baby in a manger. He is declaring a total, cosmic war on the empire. He holds a fragile reed pen over a scrap of papyrus. He is writing the exact same thing. To the Romans, Domitian is the ruler of the present world, but John is anchoring his survival, and the survival of the church, to something older than Rome, older than dirt, older than light itself. He is reaching back to the Bereshit. He is telling his terrified readers that the voice which ordered the original chaos is the exact same voice that just walked out of a tomb in Jerusalem. But John cannot use the Hebrew word. He is writing in a world dominated by the Greek language. He is writing to an audience whose minds have been shaped by Greek philosophy, Greek logic, and Greek gods. If he uses a Hebrew agricultural metaphor about the first harvest, it will not carry the devastating weight it needs to carry in the streets of Ephesus. So he borrows a Greek word. He chooses a word that Greek philosophers had been arguing over for 500 years. And when he drops this specific word onto the papyrus, it changes the entire architecture of the New Testament. John chapter 1, verse 1. He opens his account of Jesus of Nazareth with a sentence that echoes the Genesis creation story perfectly. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.